When day turns to night, and the moon is hidden from sight, shed the king of you and wear the queen. The 9 realms will open and your magic be free.
Adam couldn't master witchcraft, no matter how hard he tried, until the goddess Freya showed him the power deep inside. By the light of a moonless night, he began to change his form, transported to a mystic realm, a heroine was born. Nova Jupiter Jenkins, Nova Jupiter Jenkins, guardian of the endless library halls. Nova Jupiter Jenkins, Nova Jupiter Jenkins, deep down there is magic in us all.
Hi, my bling. It's your favorite drag witch, Nova Jupiter Jenkins. My friends call me Nova JJ, and you can too. It's our first new moon back after the summer shenanigans. If you're just joining us for the first time, I recommend heading back to listen to previous episodes to get caught up on the sitch with this witch, or at least the last episode where I summarize everything that's been going on. For our new listeners ready to soldier on, things are a little darker here in the Heath on a new moon. The library is shrouded in darkness, save for the odd candle from a dedicated patron, and things tend to be pretty quiet, except for the odd scream from a terrified patron who stumbled upon one of the gorgons guarding the stoneworking section. The tone of the new moon episodes can get a little dark as well, so consider yourself warned. Having just said that, it looks like things might be a little bit brighter in the mundane recently. Young Greta Thunberg and the climate marches, the impeachment process getting started for peachy keen Trump. Of course, neither of those things should have had to happen, but better late than never. And while we don't know the final outcome, we can hope, and maybe cast a little spell, maybe a hex here and there. Which brings us to Craft Corner. When it comes to magic in the mundane, its effects are a lot more subtle than they are in magical realms like the Heath, because it takes a lot more energy to accomplish your will. Which is why it is most effective when you can get a large number of people involved in the casting, or work within the limitations of the system and leverage the spell to amplify its effects. Conjuring a mansion out of thin air takes a massive amount of energy, even in the Heath. In the mundane, it's next to impossible. But something that doesn't take as much energy to conjure is opportunity. Opportunities are always out there, just kind of flying around. It's really just a matter of timing, and you can use magic to tweak the timing just a smidge to work in your favor. Now, in order to be able to take advantage of any opportunities you might summon, you of course need to be prepared to make the leap and follow through. As an example, the limitations of the system dictate that you can't instantly become a doctor with all of the required knowledge, but you can study hard and work at becoming a doctor, then summon the opportunity to work at a prestigious hospital. If you summoned the opportunity without having done the work of becoming a doctor, you wouldn't be able to follow through and the opportunity would be wasted. The actual spell to summon an opportunity depends on the nature of the opportunity. They almost all involve sympathetic magic, which is a type of magic where you have an object or image that symbolizes the thing you're casting the spell upon, and what you do to that object in the spell mimics what you intend for the subject of the spell. The binding spell I mentioned last episode is another example of sympathetic magic, where we took an image of the person and symbolically bound it in the yarn. An example for our current discussion: Adam had a co-worker who was bad news, to say the least. As you can imagine, her name was Karen, and she was a compulsive liar, a gossip, and manipulator who caused drama just to see it unfold, because she didn't have anything else going on in her sad life, and apparently couldn't afford Netflix. Now, Adam could have cursed her or something else not entirely pleasant, but that comes with its karmic baggage. So in a spirit of generosity, Adam cast a spell to summon a lucrative job offer for Karen. one that would entice her away from her current position to move onward and upward. He of course had to be careful that the opportunity was not within the same company, or she might end up as his boss, and he had to work to clear his mind of the negative thoughts that kept bubbling to the surface. Thoughts like, I hope she falls into a pit of snakes. Instead, he focused on the healing that could take place with her absence, and the happiness she would experience having a higher-paying job with more to occupy her time. It was also important that the choice ultimately be hers. As I mentioned last episode, interfering in the will of another's is a no-no. The spell consisted of an object that represented Karen, in this case a pair of wax lips, which were placed inside of a jar. Every time that Adam found a coin lying around, he picked it up and whispered, "A coin is a coin and a job is a job. Let the coin bring a job that will bring the coin," and place it in the jar. It was important that the coin not come from change he received spending his own money, as that distinction made sure the opportunity came from outside of his company. It took a full month, but soon enough Karen was rubbing in her face that she received a job offer she couldn't refuse. Adam planned her going away party and was almost genuinely sorry when it was discovered that she was allergic to the carrot cake he had bought for the occasion. So the moral of the story is, work hard and be prepared, and you'll be able to make a relatively simple spell go a long way. Okay, so if you remember from last episode, I'm changing the format for tarot time, so we're going to just be discussing one particular card and its meaning. So our tarot card for this episode is the Seven of Pentacles. Pentacles in general tend to represent earthly matters and often matters related to money or finances. The Seven of Pentacles, upright, represents achieving success by actively and relentlessly striving for it, without the help of anyone else. Hard, determined work, economic know-how, and creative ideas result in progress and growth. On the other hand, if the card is reversed, it can represent being dependent on outside help, having to work hard without being paid accordingly, or fruitless and futile efforts, failures, setbacks, and difficulties concerning money. So in story time, let's take a look at a story that I think involves the theme of this card, both upright and reversed. Once upon a time, there was a rich and beautiful kingdom that had been built on the graves of the indigenous population who had long inhabited that area. But the people of the kingdom didn't like to talk about that too much because it made them uncomfortable. The kingdom was ruled by an evil warlock who had made himself immortal by consuming the essence of a lava demon. The demon was consuming him from within, and as a result, his body had deformed into what was somehow an orange bloated husk. He had captured an ice maiden from the land of frost and ensorcelled her to become his queen in order to balance out the decay caused by the lava demon. The king's name was Putron de Mald. He had conquered the kingdom by traveling throughout the land in disguise and selling rotten enchanted mayonnaise to poor weak-minded peasants. The mayonnaise made them believe that everyone who was not part of their group was to blame for them being poor. Once the rotten mayonnaise had been consumed, Putron appeared and said he would lead them back to a time when they were powerful, even though a time like that never really existed. They took control of the kingdom without much resistance because the non-mayonnaise people didn't want to make a fuss. Once they had control of the kingdom, Putron created the illusion that the mayonnaise people were getting richer while all of the kingdom's riches were actually being siphoned off by the king and his family. Putron had 7 sons, all of them also named Putron, except for the youngest, who everyone thought was a girl because of the body he was born into. They forced the youngest son into dresses and called him Putra. He insisted that he was a boy and that they call him Honor, but they laughed and called him Putra anyway. When he tried to take off his dresses, they locked him in a tower with a litter of pink kittens and threatened to drown a kitten if he ever disobeyed them. He tried to call their bluff once, but they weren't bluffing. After the kittens got old enough, they would bring a new litter of kittens whose lives seemed more precious than the adults who they now ignored. Putron the king was ever fearful that one day one of his sons would overthrow him, so he raised them to be stupid, lazy, and spoiled. Much of the kingdom's wealth went toward keeping them happy and docile. They spent their days drinking wine and eating food in front of the rotten mayonnaise people, who perpetually believed they were about to join the feast, not realizing that they were actually starving to death. Honor did not participate in the feasts. He tried to feed one of the mayonnaise people once. It would have broken the spell that kept them believing they were about to be fed if they were actually given food. So Honor had to stay in the tower with his growing clouder of cats, where he spent his time training them and studying the books that he was able to smuggle in. When Honor was a young child, one of the non-mayonnaise people saw him struggling to get out of the dress he'd been shoved into. That night they had snuck in and asked him the truth of his experience. No one had ever wanted the truth before. Honor told him about how he was a boy and how everyone was under a spell that made them believe they were better and more entitled to the kingdom resources than the non-mayonnaise people. From that point on, the non-mayonnaise people smuggled in books that Honor devoured. He became obsessed with the truth, and when he had read as much as he could, he began to work at spreading the truth. He wrote articles under a pseudonym exposing what was happening in the kingdom, and then snuck the articles out for the non-mayonnaise people to find. The king, of course, was furious to find that the truth was getting out to the people. He enchanted bluebirds to whisper lies into people's ears, though only the mayonnaise people were susceptible to his lies. The more the non-mayonnaise people read about the truth, the more they gathered and called for the destruction of the king. They began to realize the strength they possessed in large numbers, but lacked the leadership needed to take focused action. In the meantime, as Honor grew into adulthood, he felt the gaze of his father on him more and more, and did not like it. It was not the gaze a father should have for someone he perceived to be his daughter. One night he appeared in Honor's tower, drunk off the souls of the rotten mayonnaise people which he drank like wine. Honor had suspected this time might come, and had readied himself to escape. He lay beneath the covers, feigning sleep, waiting for the right time. If he had tried to escape too soon, he would be foiled. The element of surprise was his best chance. Putron stumbled to the bed and stuck his hand under the covers in an attempt to grab Honor's danger zone. Instead, he grabbed onto one of the pink cats, who was not a kitten anymore. The cat clawed and bit at Putron's hand. Putron reeled back in pain, and at that moment Honor jumped up and with a snap of his fingers commanded his army of cats to attack. They overwhelmed Putron, and though the demon-infested warlock was too powerful to destroy, they incapacitated him long enough for Honor and the army of the pink pussycats to escape. Honor made his way to the non-mayonnaise people and was finally able to put on men's clothes and be called by his true name. He rallied all of the non-mayonnaise people and marched on the kingdom. Seeing the anger of so many people, all of Putron's advisors fled and his gluttonous sons threw tantrums and wept. Putron, seeing that the kingdom was lost, abandoned his wife and sons and fled back to the land of garbage from which he had been spawned. Without his wife, he was consumed from within by the lava demon until he was nothing but a pile of orange dust, which blew away on a windy day. I hope you enjoyed that little tale. That's from an anonymous author who didn't leave a title. So anyway, that's going to be it for this moon. Thanks for listening, my bling. Please share us with a friend and like, comment, or rate us on Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. You can follow me on Twitter at njupiterjenkins and check out novajj.net for show notes and other content once Adam finds the time to get the site updated. And remember, all work and no play make Jack a pawn of the demons of mediocrity. Bye.